New Orleans Humanist Perspective, presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following a few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow. Hello, folks. Thanks again for being here with us. I'm Harry Greenberger, host for the show, and we hope that you visit us often. My guest today is Jan Ramsey, and before the show we were trying to determine how long we have known each other, and neither of us could come up with a number of years, but I do know that Jan and I both were involved with the origination of the French Quarter Festival, which is 30 years old. So we go back a long way, Jan. Very recently, there was some publicity I read in the Times-Picayune and elsewhere that Jan was celebrating the 25th anniversary of her publication, which is Offbeat Magazine. And I know that this whole publication business has been pretty strenuous. But you're here 25 years after your early beginning, and I know that although the subject is music, you're interested in more than just the music itself. You're interested in musicians and and the importance that they play in the New Orleans environment, and how often they are not properly compensated. I think I've said that correctly.
Yes.
So tell us about the origins of your publication and then carry on from there.
Well, I was always very interested in music from the time I was a little girl, and I followed music and was a musician, I was a band nerd, as my granddaughter says now. And loved music, and was married to a musician at one time, so I have that perspective as well. And my background and my degree is in the hospitality industry. I got a degree from the University of New Orleans in their HRT program, and got a job working for a CPA firm that did consulting work, and I worked for them for a while, and then another consultant. And in the course of my consulting job, I was trying to do some practice development and got involved with the Chamber of Commerce and with economic development and idea. And the idea that came out of a committee that was on was something about music. And for some reason that, and this sounds like a pun, which I guess it is, but it struck a chord with me.
Okay.
And I thought, this is something that I'm very interested in, and I could, it would be an avocation for me outside of my regular job. And so we started a nonprofit association that was supposed to be to develop the music industry here, because what I perceived as a business person and a music lover is that there was so much talent, but there was no support or development of the music community per se, and of the recording studios and the musicians. I mean, they're kind of taken for granted. So I thought, well, this is if I could connect the economics of the city with music, then that would be a very interesting thing to do, and nobody had done it before, and it would help the city, it would also help the musicians. So this music association started up, and from there I was approached to buy Wavelength Magazine, which was a small music magazine which existed in New Orleans in the early 80s. And I decided not to buy it, and Offbeat kind of came out of that. It started out as a tourist publication because one of the things that Wavelength did not do was to promote the music to visitors. And again, I guess since my background was in the hospitality industry, I knew how important that was. So I thought, well, I'll always put a magazine in all the hotels because the people that come to visit here are always looking for music.
Well,
because this has a reputation as a music town.
It's interesting that there are many people today cannot imagine that only 25 years ago this city was not promoting our music, because now we know that people come here for the food and the music and the history. So it is now a major part of our tourism industry. But you're saying that when you started, it wasn't recognized as that.
No, not at all. In fact, from a media standpoint, I really got into media which was not my background. I don't consider myself to be a journalist. I could write, but I'm not a journalist. Although I definitely understand journalism and obviously respect it. But I thought that the media has the power to influence public opinion. And that's the main reason that I got into media, because I thought that if I had a magazine, and this is well before the internet,
yes,
just print, that I would have the ability to change the way that people thought about music in the city, not just the musicians, but the people who, business community, and just, John Doe and his wife who go to the Mardi Gras parades or something. The music of the city is so much a part of the culture and so integral to the culture that's one thing I wanted to point out. And again, I thought that if I connected it to the economy of the city, in tourism or economic impact, that the people who are in the business community would recognize that and say, maybe we're not thinking about this in the proper way.
And then what was it that you were hoping the people in the business community would do?
Well, I thought that there was one of the things that I found out fairly early is that there was very little understanding from the financial community, from banks and venture capital, about how the music industry works. And I can remember very well, probably 1992, 93, one of the ideas that I had, along with a good friend of mine, Marcia Cavanaugh. I don't know if you know Marcia. She used to be on Channel 6. We're good friends, and we thought it would be a very good idea to talk to the bankers in New Orleans and introduce them to the concept of banking for the music industry. So what we would do is we would bring in bankers from Nashville who were oriented toward the kind of business that music is.
Yes.
And one thing that I remember very well is we had a guy from Nashville from a bank, and he and also from BMI and ASCAP, because they're the performance rights organizations. A bank here might say, well, if we're going to make you a loan, we need some collateral to make the loan. And if you don't have something to give up, something permanent, then a bank here is not going to, do anything with it. Whereas in Nashville, the banker would recognize that this particular person had a catalog of publishing that was worth money, that was throwing off revenue on a regular basis, and they could use that as collateral, you see.
Okay.
So, it was something that a banker here they just didn't know how the business worked at all.
And at that time, were there local musicians who were actually, selling whatever records or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think probably one of the most successful people in terms of music business here has been Alan Toussaint, because Toussaint is obviously a musician, and people have seen him play. Although, frankly, he didn't play very much when I first started the magazine. He wasn't out there playing. What Alan did, he was a co-owner of a studio, which doesn't exist anymore, and he also was a producer of recordings, and he wrote music. And the money in the music industry has always been from publishing and songs. Mm-hmm. That's what throws money off. Nowadays, it's getting more difficult because of the way the music industry has changed, in that it's not dominated by record companies and CD sales. It's dominated by digital downloads. So there's been a sort of a paradigm shift in the way that people think about how money is made in the music industry.
Okay,
so, I mean, which is a real complicated issue, but...
All right. So you began publication of Offbeat Magazine, yes, with the hope and the intention that this would bring proper attention to music as a business and as a tourist attraction.
Yes.
And did that just immediately get the results you wanted? How did that work out?
And I never thought it would, frankly, I never thought it would take this long, and I am not someone who feels like I've accomplished what I would like to accomplish. I think that if I look back over the past 25 years, I think Offbeat has done some significant things in that we have, first of all, managed to stay around for 25 years, which is I guess, significant for a little magazine, But when we first started, the Times-Picayune, for example, did not have a music writer. They did not have a music writer. They didn't have a staff person who wrote about music. I mean, consider that New Orleans is the birthplace of jazz.
Yes.
And we have so much music here. The Times-Picayune did not have a music writer, so they paid no attention to it. After Offbeat started, I think I was in business for maybe 2 or 3 years when they hired, for the first time, Scott Ages, who now works for the Jazz and Heritage Foundation. Scott was their very first music writer, and which was astounding, and it was wonderful. So somebody was paying attention. And then Scott left, and my editor at the time went to work for the Times-Picayune, and he still works there. I created a music writer at the TP. So
good for you.
Yes, Keith Sperry is a wonderful man, very, very good man.
All right, and so then as the years progressed, and you continued your publication, and I presume with some difficulty.
Oh yeah, a lot of difficulty actually.
But were you feeling success, gradual success, or?
Well, I think that about 10 years into it, I was feeling that we had actually gotten to the point where we weren't as desperate, about making payroll and stuff like that. Because after all, while the business Offbeat is I think it's more of an altruistic vision. It's still a business, and I still have to pay the rent, pay taxes.
Of course.
So you do have to. I do have to sell advertising, for example, and by that point, we had gotten on stable footing. At the same time, it's interesting because one of the things that I also noted, being a business person and in the hospitality industry early on, is that the Jazz and Heritage Festival was a phenomenon, and it had not anywhere near reached the point where it is now.
And then what year did that commence?
Well, I started the magazine in '88. I'd started, thinking about it. So the Jazz Fest at that time was a little over 10 years old, and it had just started to get some traction, but I don't think it was recognized internationally for the event that it was and that it became. And because it wasn't really recognized by national media. And during the period of time where Offbeat was sort of growing is when the Jazz Fest, I can remember this very well too, USA Today came in and covered the Jazz Fest for the first time, and it was a headline. And after that, things really did change. And I thought to myself, well, there are a whole group of people, not just in New Orleans, but people all over the country and literally all over the world who love New Orleans and Louisiana music, and they will pay money, good money, to come to New Orleans once a year to experience this. And not only do they experience it at that point, they take it back with them because they've heard music that they love, and then they'll go back and buy CDs, or at that time there was no internet. They'll buy the CDs and support the music in more of a long-range way. And I thought, well, this is something that the city should be capitalizing on in a much bigger way. We need more festivals.
Well, as I was going to say, you say they would come for this once-a-year event. Yeah. Once a year is not enough.
No, obviously not.
Now, there somehow or other, New Orleans seems to have homegrown talent.
Yes.
Musicians who just, maybe even without formal training, they grow and they rise in New Orleans. But I think you found early on that they weren't able to make a living doing that.
That's true, and a lot of them still aren't, because music is, while it is an art form, it's not supported in the same way as, say, the visual arts are, or theater even. The musicians are out there playing gigs at clubs, sometimes for a percentage of the bar. And it's hard to make a living that way.
Yes.
And, when you hear about the city trying to get rid of street musicians, it's like, why? Why would you want to do that? These people actually, some of them send their kids to college and buy houses playing on the street. And I know people who this is true of. So, why kill the goose that laid the golden egg? I don't understand that. And I only think that kind of mentality exists because people who live in New Orleans, I think, take music for granted, and they still take music for granted, and they don't understand the way music works. I always looked at a musician or a band as a business. Each musician and each band is an entrepreneur, and unfortunately, being artists, sometimes they don't approach that as a business.
Even visual artists, most of them
exactly.
are not business people.
No, they're not business people, and so one of the things that I thought was very important as well was education. And back early on, there was nothing really for musicians, and now there's the Jazz Studies program both at UNO and Loyola. Loyola has a music business studies program. There are music business studies at Delgado. There are ongoing kind of classes for musicians. There's the musicians clinic, which supports the health care for musicians. There are the musicians co-ops, which is actually started in the city, and then the Tipitina's Foundation now supports it. So, there is still some recognition, but in my mind, it's not enough.
But do you feel that Offbeat may have in some way engendered these?
Well, I like to think so. I hope so. I think the fact that I have become a spokesperson, I guess, for music, and I have a soapbox to talk about it, has helped. I really think so.
Well, one thing I would like for our audience to see, because your December 2012 issue was your 25th anniversary issue.
Yes. And
you appear on the cover.
Yes, for the first time.
Hold it up and let the folks see this provocative cover.
You think it's provocative?
There is Jan Ramsey in a bubble bath. So that's I assume this is going to be a collector's edition.
Well, I don't know, but it's amazing to me what a little makeup and Photoshop can do with an old broad sitting.
Well, we just have to assume that those bubbles are covering up some nudity, but
yeah, well, you can assume that, but you know.
Anyway, but that was your 25th year edition. That was in December of 2012. You now have your January. You come out once a month, is that right?
Yeah, we come out once a month in print, but our website has been active since 1995.
Okay.
And we've redone it several times. We're in a point where we're going to relaunch it again, but that we put new content up every day. We're always trying to come up with new ideas to keep it coming back to the site. And then we also have a weekly newsletter that we send out. We have 28,000 subscribers to that.
28,000?
Yeah, 28,000 subscribers from all over the world. And we get letters from these people, which when I hear, the tourism people say, well, it's not really that important. I know how important it is. I know what happens at Jazz Fest and French Quarter Fest, and I know the people that read Offbeat online and in print. And they are rabid supporters, and it's sort of the thing. And I think that the tourism people know this. Once you come to New Orleans once, you're going to come back if you have a good experience. That's sort of typical, and they need to capitalize on that.
Yes.
Music will always bring people back, always.
I'll tell you something that we did recently. My organization was the local host organization for the National Convention of the American Humanist Association, and so they were giving. We had a half an hour during this convention with a large number of attendees from all over the country, and we wanted the people at that meeting, which is at the Sheraton Hotel, to know they had been in New Orleans. So when we found out that they had worked with the catering department and they were having the customary kind of whatever snacks, we said, no, we want mini muffalettas, we want some jambalaya, we fed them New Orleans food, but we engaged a brass band.
Right.
And so when the big meeting that was held prior to our reception area, and I said, now, before you conclude this meeting, I want to get up because I have to tell this audience something. And I had the band outside that meeting room. I said, now, when we leave here, we want everyone to go single file through one door, and you will follow the band out there, and that's what we call second lining. And so people in my organization were standing there with loads of Mardi Gras beads. And so they came out and they second line behind a marching band playing When the Saints Go Marching In. Mm. And so we felt like they had experienced New Orleans, which was food and music. And there should be more of that going on.
Well, there actually is more of that going on. And, I've been pushing for years some sort of the burr under the saddle of the Convention and Visitors Bureau that always push for music, and from what I understand, when they get their new campaign, they're going to have a lot more music involved in it. So I'm very happy about that. And another thing I think that's been very significant, at least for the city in several different ways, is the fact that Treme has been shot here, the HBO series Treme.
Yeah,
That has brought so much attention to the city and to the musicians, because the two co-creators of that particular show are so music-oriented that they did something that was totally different. I mean, that show is really about music. In fact, I've heard people tell me that it's got too much music in it, but for me, it's wonderful because I know everybody who's in the show.
Well, and it has been a successful show.
It's been a successful show, and it's not only raised the profile of music in the city, but it has given a lot of local musicians work, and not only day work, but ongoing residuals, say, for their music.
Well, with the expansion, like the French Quarter has always had music in the bars, but the French Quarter then overflowed to Marigny.
Yes.
And there are music venues in Marigny as well.
Well, there's Frenchmen Street, and Frenchmen Street has now become sort of a music mecca. It was sort of the place where only the locals used to go, but now it's being discovered by visitors.
Yes.
And which is in some ways good, in some ways bad, because it could destroy the vibe. You know, if you get too many people there, you know, it's becoming. The people that have places on Frenchmen Street are all very music. They love the music. They're into music. They're not into, you know, strip clubs or anything. They're into music, and they don't want it to get too much, too commercial. Let's say they want it to maintain that vibe, but it's very difficult. Whenever anything gets popular, it changes. It's the same way with a jazz fest. You know, I mean, I can use that as a good analogy. Because a jazz fest, once they started adding acts that were not necessarily New Orleans acts, they caught a lot of criticism. But, you know, one of the reasons they have to do it is they need sponsors and they need people to come in. And, you know, so commercialism is unfortunately part of anything.
Jan, we've got a couple minutes left, and I'm going to just say, why don't you just tell our audience whatever you'd like to tell them for a couple of minutes.
I guess I would like to tell the audience to please support local music as much as possible and try to understand how important music is to our city's culture and our quality of life here, and also our economy. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our Best of the Beat Awards, which is something that we've done for 19 years to reward local musicians for their contribution to musical culture, and also to reward the sort of the progenitors of music. We give Lifetime Achievement Awards to people in music and in education and in music business. And that's going to be this year on January 18th at Generations Hall. I
see. Well, you have had 25 successful years with your magazine. Are you looking forward to 25 more?
Well, if I can make it that long, that would be great. I'm still happy that we have a print magazine. You know, we've thought about making it only online, but, you know, I have too many people who want the magazine in their hands, so.
I agree. I feel that way about the Times-Picayune, you know. And,
absolutely.
And my Newsweek magazine, which ceased paper publication, I like to feel paper in my hand. Okay, well, Jan, thanks for being here.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, folks, for watching. Come see us again.